So here are the rules. Today is Friday the 23rd of February and I have until Sunday to create a whole video game with art, music and gameplay. And on top of that, I've never touched a game engine. So I'm basically I'm participating in the Duck Games, a game jam where roughly 60 people lock themselves in this place for the weekend and make a video game. And at the end, the best games get prizes.
Wow, beautiful. So shiny.
So on Friday, I got on my bike and barely made it to the opening ceremony because this freaking van wouldn't move out of the way. Now, every game jam has a theme on which you have to base your game. And at the opening ceremony, they announced that the theme would be Discovery. And from there, the clock started ticking. So here's the plan. First, find an awesome team, because doing this alone, honestly. Second, familiarize myself with game development by making Flappy Bird. Third, make the actual game. And fourth, win all the prizes. Literally every single one. What, you have a problem with that? No, that's okay, that's what I thought. Alright, so after the opening ceremony, I started to talk to people and eventually I managed to find a team. Let's meet them. First of all, we have Joshua. He's an awesome game designer and has a lot of experience with game development, so he's a pro. Then we have Mikey. He's done a couple of game jams before and he's really good at making music for video games. Then we have Aaron, who's really good at coding and has also some experience with game development. And last but not least, there's Stuart. He's the most experienced out of all of us and he's great at making pixel art. And then there's me. I haven't made a game in my life and all of this is completely new, so way to go me, let's go. I'm basically completely useless. Fantastic. So anyway, we move upstairs and find a fancy table to set up base camp and start working on the game. And we decide to make it using Unity, which is fantastic because I haven't coded in C# in years and I have zero experience with it. Not to mention other Unity related drama. I had used Pygame before, but since everyone had previous experience with Unity, it made sense to go with that. So at this point, while my teammates start to work on the game, I decide to execute the second part of my master plan. Make Flappy Bird from scratch and learn how to make games. So I found a random tutorial off the internet and would you look at that, we have a bird that can fly, let's go. Except it's not a bird, it's a square and I have no idea what I'm doing. So I kept following the tutorial and decided to add pipes. Which came out not too great at the beginning because they were like super close together, but after a bit of playing around I managed to get this. Pretty cool, right? Only problem is that this is like the most boring game ever, so let's spice it up. That's much better, but hold on, rewind? Yep, okay, we have to fix that. And after 10 minutes or so, I kind of fixed it. At this point, I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty happy with my creation, and even though it looked nothing like Flappy Bird, I learned the basics of Unity, and I was ready to implement the third part of my master plan, make the actual game. Now, by this point, my teammates had been working on the game for some time, and we had made some good progress. We had a game that looked like this. You could control the player, move, double jump, and jump. However, we didn't really have a solid idea of what we wanted to do. Should we make a platform game, an isometric game, or a top-down like Pokemon? We didn't know. So after a bit of thinking, we decided to go with a platformer, because we didn't have that much time and it sounded like we can build League of Legends in a weekend. And since the theme of the game jam was discovery, we came up with the following idea. We wanted to create something different than most platformers, where the player would have to discover different abilities to pass the game. For example, at the beginning, the player can't jump, and it's not until they unlock the ability to jump that they can. We also wanted the game to be a bit more tricky than a normal platformer like Mario Bros. Instead of the player always going forward, you have to discover different paths to eventually find the solution. And we decided that our character would be a duck. You know, because it's like the Duck Games. Yeah, we're super original, I know. So we got to work. Stuart made pixel art for the duck, which came out pretty sick to be honest. I mean, just look at that, it's like pretty cool. Mikey started making music for the game and the rest of us worked on the jump abilities and the coin collecting. And by 11 PM, we had something decent. Look, you're this cute little duck and at the beginning you can't jump, but once you collect this ability, now you can. You can even collect coins and Joshua even implemented a cool animation for when the duck is jumping. And at this point, I was kind of tired, so we all went home, except Stuart, who decided to keep going. And that was the end of day one. So after a good night of sleep, I got on my bike again with no annoying band this time, made my coffee, grabbed some snacks, and I went upstairs and opened my computer. And then I received the worst possible news. Stuart dropped out of the competition. So that meant that the most experienced out of all of us wouldn't be able to help us. That's tough. Before he left though, he did leave us with a ton of pixel art and organize a whole project, so
Thank you for your service, Stuart.
But anyways, after the terrible news, I started to implement shooting in the game, which was far from easy for a Unity noob like me. Yeah. But after a couple of YouTube videos, I somehow managed to do it, which I'm pretty happy about. Like, look at this, the duck is freaking shooting, it's cool. I also worked on creating enemies and being able to kill them. And by this point, all my teammates had arrived, so we decided that we needed some more abilities. Joshua, the game designer, thought of adding a water ability, so I got to work, and pretty soon we had it. So if players jumped into the water right away, they would die immediately. Unless they got the water ability first, in which case they would swim. Yeah, I know it's not really swimming, but it's the best we could do, okay? Then we added some more platforms, some boxes, Aaron added some sound effects, and finally Mikey sent us the awesome music he had been working on. Check it out. It's pretty sick, right? And with that done, we decided to implement two new abilities. First of all, we wanted to be able to dash, and after learning about coroutines and following some tutorials, I actually did it. Look at this, the duck can dash now. The second was a sunglasses ability. We made this zone over here where there's like a sunlight ray that you can only pass through if you have the sunglasses. And my friend the duck is looking good over here. And all of a sudden we have some decent player dynamics, where the player would have to find different abilities and dash under certain objects to complete the level. Then they gave us this delicious looking Pokeball, which was pretty sick considering this event was free to join. We then also added a coin counter where you would have to collect all these coins before moving on to the next level. And I also fixed this bug where boxes would kill you if you jumped on them because they were labeled as enemies. And yeah, that bug was kind of my fault, but anyways. And by the end of day 2, we had a pretty decent game. There were cool abilities, you could die from spikes, and you can even shoot, dash and collect coins, which was awesome. However, there was one thing missing: enemies. So after 2 grueling hours, I added some enemies with specific routes, which you could also kill with bullets. In hindsight, I did go a bit crazy with the enemies because I added like 10, and Joshua was like, bro, you need to chill with the enemies, there's like too many. And yeah, he was right, as always. And that was pretty much it for day 2. And before we knew it, it was day 3, the final day. I hopped on my bike, made my coffee, you know the drill, and by this point we had 5 hours before we had to submit our game. So I quickly made level 2, like in an hour or so. Joshua used Unity's particle system to make the abilities glow, and I added a key and a door to the second level. I also kinda went crazy with this big ass maze in the second level, but we don't talk about that. Finally, we added an awesome background made by Mikey and finished and uploaded our game 30 minutes before the deadline. So yeah, we did it, and for my first time making a video game with zero experience, I was pretty happy. All that was left now was to do the presentation, and then win all the prizes. Easy peasy, right? So we headed to the conference room with all the teams, and of course, out of the 15 teams, we were the first ones to get called on stage. I mean, seriously, what are the chances? And here's basically how the presentation went. Hello everyone, so yeah, this is our game. You're a duck, and yeah, you could do cool shit like jump, dash, shoot, and swim in water. There's 2 levels, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, all jokes aside, the presentation was not that bad. Everyone laughed, and everyone is super supportive, and we honestly had a good time. And then we saw the other games, and holy shit, were they good. I mean, just look at this freaking game. You're a submarine exploring deep waters. Just look at this, how did they do this in 48 hours? Or look at this other game where you're an alien abducting some cows. Anyway, needless to say, our expectations were pretty low. And then came the moment we have all been waiting for, the prizes. There were 5 prizes: best video, best interpretation of the theme, best art and visuals, best storytelling, best sound, and best accessibility. Best accessibility went to Opposal, who made a pretty sick game about hand recognition. Best sound went to Discovery, a legal process. Best storytelling went to Pilot's Path. Best visuals went to Meteor Maker. Best interpretation of the theme went to Abyssal. And then, when all hope was lost and everything looked bleak, came best video game. And against all odds, I'm happy to say that, yeah, we lost. Abysmal got the best game as well. But it's all good, I had a great time, learned a lot, and in the end it's all about having fun, and I couldn't care less about the prizes. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, you can play the game online if you want to. I know it's not that great, but I don't know. If you're bored and you want to have some fun, yeah, check it out.